started here. Call this meeting to order at 3:05, and hopefully Mr. Palmer can join us. We've got Philip Simon online as well, along with many others. So, a couple of announcements. Want to welcome our city council members, Manager Layton, and council members-elect Mike Hoheisel and Maggie Ballard. Thank you guys for joining us today. Penny, any public comment other than the golf? Okay. Is there anybody here to speak on anything other than the golf situation? See none. Minutes are not available for approval at this time, but if you want to see a recording of the prior meetings, you can find that URL on the agenda. New items. Tree analysis study with Adam. Adam, I'm not even going to try to pronounce your last name, brother.
It's so weird to be on the other side because usually I'm over there in the corner pressing all the buttons. So it's usually, yeah. So I can just push the buttons here. But good morning. My name's Adam Debenzall. I am a management fellow in the city manager's office. I'm here to talk to you today about local and national tree policies. The commissioners here reached out originally to Troy wanting to know about what local tree policies are currently in place, and then what are also other best practices that other cities are doing. So what I put together was about 10 cities, analyzing in form of a matrix type form, looking at different what policies are in place regarding planting, maintenance, tree surveys, penalties, and whatnot. And so that's what this presentation is for you today, as well as just what some proposed possible language could look like, just molding a couple of different cities, Oklahoma City and Kenmore, Washington, which I'm a little biased. I previously had an internship in Kenmore, Washington prior to coming here, so I had some experience with their tree policy in the past. So if we want to just quickly take a look in the beginning at what the current Wichita tree policy is on public property, I reached out to engineering, the building and codes department, as well as the planning department, to kind of get some background on what the permitting process is for public property, if at all, regarding planting and maintaining trees. So when plans are being developed for construction of public infrastructure, engineering and public works work with the designers to minimize existing tree removal within the public right-of-way. This includes engaging forestry to discuss potential tree impacts with proposed design work when necessary, and then many times the truth impact is not realized until the construction is underway. Many capital projects include planting trees regardless of what might be removed with the project. Public Works and Engineering has no mitigation policy for replacement, but tries to generally design new tree planting when implementing new projects. A quick review of 14 capital projects over the last 5 years showed just over 700 new trees being planted. Public infrastructure improvements can be designed and built by private project. These are often individual commercial developments with design plans approved by Public Works and Engineering and construction certified by licensed professional engineers. Tree removal for those projects is not focus of design review, nor is there an expectation for planting new trees, although zoning requirements often require the same for screening. And annual sidewalk repair plans often impacts trees within public right-of-way, and staff does engage forestry for consultation nearly every time with sidewalk repairs. Since the adjacent property owner is responsible for the cost of the repairs, there's no mitigation plan for replacing trees that have to be removed. Overall, what we kind of figured out from this is that there is no formal tree survey or policy and no notification of tree removal on public property, but per Wichita statute, there is tree notification if it is on private property. If we look towards the landscaping code, two existing codes currently say that existing indigenous vegetation on a site is encouraged to be retained in development and may be credited towards required landscaping in per city ordinance, provided the vegetation is adequately protected during construction to ensure long-term survival, and the preservation and protection from construction damage of each existing tree of 6 or more inches in trunk diameter measured at diameter breast height or 6 inches above the ground within the street yard, parking lot, or perimeter buffer area of a site shall be accounted for the equivalent of 2 trees required in landscaped street yard, parking lot, or perimeter in the buffer area site. As I mentioned, other local governments have a range of different policies depending on local politics and city priorities. Laws vary from less protective to very protective. That's my creation of a less protected to very protective. As I mentioned, analyzed 10 cities, including the city of Wichita. And what I've put together here is a chart based solely on subjective reasoning. It was me doing the research and kind of looking at what I felt based on what each ordinance said, and labeling based on what I see as more protective versus less protective. Typically, those that were less protective had less actual ordinances in place, or they were more broad, or they had less strict penalties, things like that, or just didn't even account for some things that other cities had mentioned. In the lowest category, we saw that Fort Worth, Derby, and Wichita tended to be more on the less protective side, versus Oklahoma City, Seattle, and Austin tended to be on the more protective side. As requested, I have put together what a mix of tree policy language could look like, mixing Oklahoma City based on geographic location, as well as Kenmore, Washington based on size of the municipality, as well as resources available to immediately put towards work or implementation. This would move the city ordinance protection level up to between Kenmore and Oklahoma City. So it would be in the top 5 of more protective, but not at the far end where bigger cities who have more resources could do that, but not on the lower end of where it currently is at. This concludes the presentation here, and I can stand for any questions at this time.
Any questions for Adam?
I got a question.
Yeah.
Chris Pompelli. I really want to say thank you very much for following through with this. This is one of the things that has been most asked of me since and before I've been on the park board is what can we do to protect our tree canopy? What policies could be in place? Could you just kind of give a broad sketch of using your admittedly subjective criteria, going from what we have now and going to where we would potentially be in this hypothetical, after the study is completed and we get a Wichita-sized answer, which I think is what everybody would want, what would change in your view?
So what I saw that other cities typically had that Wichita doesn't have is a tree survey requirement. So before each project is put in place, engineers or landscapers need to propose what is going to happen in to the current tree policies current tree landscape. So the taking down of trees with the implementation of how many would go in. If you look at other cities like Oklahoma City, they have a point system that would help improve the number of trees that are being planted based on the size of the trees that you're removing. So that could increase the canopy size, as well as I had another idea, but I blanked. But per Gary Ferris and the Park and Recreation Forestry Division, currently we remove about 3,000 to 5,000 trees per year, and yet we're only planting about 1,300 to 1,600. So that's just to show the extent of the problem. And what can I imagine is that implementing a tree policy survey as more of a city policy would ensure that if trees are removed, there is a plan to replant them, and implementing something like using species that are supported by organizations such as K-State, which in the document that I provided you would provide trees that are beneficial towards our landscape and not just random maples or random cottonwoods. I know cottonwood's not the biggest fan of a tree species around here in this area. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Really the main thing I wanted to mention that really got brought up to me is that I have a personal friend of mine who's a homeowner right by the river, and they had a real marquee tree that they were willing to spend significant personal resources on preserving. And because of the lack of a policy, a lack of redress, the opportunity to redress with the city, unfortunately, the worst possible outcome came. We tore the tree down, and now we got an angry citizen and an unresponsive department, unfortunately. I understand that everybody's trying to do their best.
Yeah.
But I want to make certain that whatever we do moving forward is we can say we're creating a framework that residents can say, hey, I love this tree for a particular reason. I believe it contributes to all the set of needs. I think it's also important to recognize the value of our natural habitat and making certain that we are having a minimal level of canopy tree cover. And the dramatic decrease that you're describing is unacceptable. So I think that we need to be talking about what timelines look like to mitigate for that. And I also just think that it's really a good opportunity for public engagement. I know that the people really made their voices loud and clear last year last year in the lead up to the elections, both in the primary and the general election. I think there are people who would nod their heads and say this is an important issue. Our city council members could probably agree. So I just think that's an important thing to really view, and I really do appreciate you starting this process. I think it's very important. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Adam, one more question.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry. I like how you ranked it. Thank you for doing that, by the way. Do we know what the cost would look like for us as a community? Like, what do we need to do and what do we need to invest in? Because I think it's awesome, like, for us to bump up and be higher up on this list. But what would it look like for us? Like, what do we need to dedicate financially to be able to be above a Kenmore and around an Oklahoma City?
So I do not have financial numbers, but what I could tell you is that where the financial consideration goes to the private homeowner. It ends up going to the developer based on all these situations, because it's then on the responsibility of the developer and the homeowner to pay for those landscaping services or to pay for an engineer to do a tree survey, which would cost more time and money for a developer or a homeowner, and it could cost more time and resources to go towards our building and codes development people who go through these permits and as well as our planning department who accept these permits. So it would take more time to deal with that and that side as well.
So it wouldn't necessarily cost us
No,
not
as a city.
Just as a
it would
city,
cost more.
right.
It would cost the developer,
Sure.
and it would cost the city more time to go through those applications.
No, that's good. And then do you think, if we were to adopt it, what would that gap look like? You mentioned we cut down 3,000 to 4,000 trees, right? If we have this policy in place, does that number, do you see that number reducing by 1,000?
I do not have formal calculations. I could get that to you if that is something you were interested in, but from what I have seen in my experience of working in Kenmore, Washington, they didn't have a problem so much and they were losing a lot of trees. So per my experience, I can't say for certain that it would go down to zero, but I definitely could imagine that more trees would be planted. Quite a significant more trees would be planted than there currently are now.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think that'd be really interesting for us to see, like, how many more trees are we saving?
Yeah.
That'd be awesome. Thank you.
If I could answer a few questions as well. So one of the reasons why so many trees are leaving is because they've been diseased. We've been infested by several different insects that are having a huge impact on the health of the trees. And so that's what is the big reason why there's such a influx of removal of trees. We did get some budget money this past year to actually go back and put money into the contract for planting trees. And so our forestry folks are actually doing a lot of work in regards to making plans to do that for next year, planting hopefully more trees than we had in the past year. And to talk to your situation a little bit, Chris, in regards to talking to residents, we get calls quite a bit in regards to, can this tree be saved? What can we do to remove it? Some people want the trees removed. It goes both directions. Our forestry staff, I think, is very, very responsive in dealing with those situations. Most recently, a church wants to put a signage in front of there and actually asked us to remove 3 trees that are specimen trees that we don't want to necessarily get rid of. So we talked to them and we looked at some different opportunities for them to redesign their sign, maybe a different location for their sign. So staff really does spend some time dealing with that on one-on-one basis with a lot of our city customers.
I do want to respond to that in particular, and that's not to impugn the staff. Let me just be clear, this is not to say that the staff did anything wrong. Again, I believe the staff is doing the best they can with limited resources. Understanding that, it would help my case that if somebody's coming to me saying, hey, this is what we want to do, I can say, did you follow the laid out process that we have publicized, that if you have an issue, bum, 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 these are your levels of recourse that you can go to. That's not in place now. That's not to say anybody's doing anything wrong. You just haven't been asked for it. So I think that'd be a useful thing. One final thing I'd like to mention, I think there's space, opportunity, rather than expecting to just solely pass on cost to the user, possibly to a developer. I'd like to be able to say, is there a potential that we could look for unique funding opportunities through grants or possibly infrastructure dollars? Because I think a lot of people would recognize this is an issue, let's think outside the box, of climate remediation as well. It's also taking care of some of our groundwater issues in some cases. How can we fold that in? If we're going to be talking about some creative solutions here, let's actually make it worth everybody's time and say, let's build for the future with this policy. Not just be punitive. How is it that we can help people build a better Wichita with our tree?
Most definitely. Those are the things that we look at quite often in regards to grants. But one of the things we really need to pay attention to is that I don't know the exact amount of percentage, but the majority of the land that's out there that needs trees is actually private. Not necessarily all this has to be on public land. So I think coming to developing a program that will really help address homeowners, plant more trees in their yards, helping local businesses that have, especially some of the factories that have a lot of land. What comes to mind is Textron and some of the other places that have a lot of open space. They could save a lot of money on mowing and fertilization, all the things that go with grass, if they had more trees.
And how could we incentivize that, I think might be the question. How is it, as a city, we can say to people, like, you don't have to do this, but it would be certainly good for you for X, Y, and Z reasons.
Right. And that funding coming through the city is something that we'd have to go through the whole funding process and get with our processes going through council. But other things we can do is looking back at the private sector, looking at nonprofits. We've had some nonprofits that we've worked with in the past to do some tree plantings on private property. So, yep.
I've got Phil Simon. He's had his hand up for a little bit. Thank you for your patience, Philip.
No problem. I was just going to say that at the Sustainability Board meeting the other night, the trees were probably the most talked about topic. So leaning on the Sustainability Committee would be a big help as well for everyone. So just put that out there.
Thank you, Phil. Anybody else? Any more questions, comments for Adam or Troy? See none? Thank you, guys. Item B, benchmark comparisons. Troy.
All right, so I got a PowerPoint for this. All right, so the board had asked a little bit about how do we compare to other cities or the industry in regards to some basic benchmarking that happens. And there's actually a couple, 2 or 3 places where I can find this. Trust for Public Land provides a really great annual report. The National Parks and Rec Association provides an annual report, amongst some other ones as well. So I went ahead and used the National Parks and Rec Association report, and they put this out every year, and I could send it to you guys in the entirety. But what I did was I pulled out several of the highlights that kind of compares us to not necessarily like cities, but across the country. If I really wanted to really get down to like cities, I'd really have to call them and get more research done and work with them on that. So, but the National Parks and Rec Association, they're very interested in providing more resources in Parks and Recreation for all the great things that we know that Parks and Recreation provides. As you mentioned, trees, but what green spaces mean to different communities and programs and activities. So here's something that they kind of put together, some key findings that they use to help market parks and recreation across the country. But in particular, I wanted to highlight a few things that they did find in their research. And every year, there's probably about 500 to 600 cities across the country that provide lots of information, and we do as well. That's one of our requirements for being accredited. And so I thought this was kind of interesting, the programs that are offered by parks and rec agencies. And there's a myriad of different types. What was really kind of interesting to me was performing arts, cultural arts, and visual arts is definitely items that you see in parks and recreation departments, and something I think we might be moving forward on going forward, doing more of this type of programming. So we definitely have been very more cognizant of providing cultural programming in parks and recreation. And we also wanted to do more for at-risk youth as well as physically, what's the word I'm looking for? Accessible programming. Yep, that would be helpful for us to actually do more of that. We do some great stuff, like we hosted the Beep Ball National Tournament. I thought that was really awesome. So those are some of the things that we want to do more in the future. Some key responsibilities that comes across parks and recreation agencies, and you have your typical ones in here, but there's always a lot of different things that come up. One that's not in here that I always think is interesting is our care of and oversight of cemeteries. So a lot of parks and recreation departments take care of cemeteries as well. So here's what we get to in regards to some of the benchmarkings and parks and recreation agencies staffing with FTEs. And here in Parks and Recreation with the City of Wichita, and this is just parks and recreation. It doesn't include golf. It doesn't include any other parts of what we oversee, but we have 136 FTEs. And on the very bottom over there, you'll see where it says more than 250,000. That's the category that we fall into. The median staffing rate across the country is 254. The lower quartile is 106, and the upper quartile is 550. That's pretty broad because we're looking at probably cities that are also 500,000, 700,000 in this. So this is a little bit skewed, but kind of gives you an idea. We're definitely not in the bottom quartile, but we're not in the median as well. So, but think about this, there's also cities that are 700, 800,000 in this category as well. So another metric that they look at is Parks and Recreation FTEs per 10,000 residents. This one's a little bit more clear that you can actually see where those numbers at. And we're at 3.4 FTEs per 10,000 residents. And again, on the far right, on the bottom, the median is 4.7, the lower quartile is 2.3, and the upper quartile is 8.2. In regards to budget, our current budget, and this again is just Parks and Recreation, doesn't include any of the things that we put our efforts into, like Botanica or Great Plains Nature Center or golf. So let's see here. Our current budget is $17.7 million. And again, you look at the very far right bottom on the more than 25,000 category. The median is 28 million. The lower quartile is 13, and the upper is 52. So again, we're not in the lowest, but we're definitely lower than the median. And then current operating costs per capita, $42.77 per resident. And then same thing on the bottom right, you'll see more than 250,000. The median is $54. The lower quartile is 21, and the upper quartile is 85. So again, we're not the very lowest, but we're definitely lower than the median. Some other areas that I thought was really kind of interesting, this was directly from the report, because we give this information and they rate us across the board, and people can actually see what Wichita is doing, but With special requests, we can find out what other cities rate in these ratios. So the operating expense per capita, you saw that earlier. Revenue per capita. So our department, and this includes Parks and Recreation, all the recreation, as well as parks revenue, excluding some of the other areas like golf and other areas that really, Botanica, we're at $5.66 per capita, which means we really don't make a whole lot of money when it comes to averaging everything out across all of our parks. The total revenue to total operating expenditure, which is kind of one of the things that we look at, how we operate all of our recreation centers, what kind of operating expenses that they have compared to their revenues. Across the whole board, it's 13.2. But this also includes parks, which kind of skews this very, very strongly. You look at the revenue reports that we get from all of our recreation centers. We just looked at the tennis center the other day, and it's roughly about $95 cost recovery. So the cost recovery in all the rec centers is a lot higher than this number. Next one is the operating expenditures per parkland. I didn't get anything back on that. Operating expenditures per parkland, acres per parkland, is about $3,300. So it costs us about $3,300 to maintain 1 acre of parkland across the city. And if you look at this compared to other agencies, they're spending a whole lot more money than we are. So that could be a lot of different things, could be different parts of the country, could be that they have different standards, could be that their parks have different kind of amenities in there. So there's a lot of subjectivity in this, but this is just some general ideas of what to look at. Operating expenditures per acres of parkland and non-parkland sites. This would also include like facilities, other activities. And again, our city is a little bit lower than all other agencies across the country. Operating expenditures per FTEs. This is across all parks, and again, we spend a whole lot less than all other agencies across the country. FTEs per 10,000 population. But this also includes recreation and parks, and we're at 6.5 compared to other agencies. Acres of parks per 1,000 residents. We have a whole lot of acreage. We actually have more acreage than most people across the country. Number of residents per park. So this means that we have 2,800 residents per park, which is a little bit lower than other agencies, which is really kind of contradictory to what was just shared with on item number 10, but it's a really interesting to really go back and look and see where that number comes from. Number of acres per park. We have 36 acres per park, which means our parks are a lot larger than most parks across the country, other places across the country. So the number of participants per program, 119. That means our programs are well used. We have a lot of folks that come use our recreation centers, and this is a really positive metric for us to see. It gets us all excited. Ratio of fee programs to all programs, 61%. So this would include a lot of our special events that we get a lot of participation in. And those are obviously are free. So so this number is obviously going to be a little bit number than other agencies across the country. Ratio of building attendance to park attendance. So this shows that our recreation centers are being used, that there's a lot of people coming in and using our recreation centers for different programs. So this is just a general, really high level. Like I mentioned, there's a lot of subjectivity in this. So you have to really get down and find out how they got these metrics together, but I wanted to share this with you because this is what's put across the whole country with all these agencies that participate in this program. So you have any questions or anything else that you want me to share?
Questions or comments for Troy?
Troy, I had asked you the last time we had a meeting to talk about some issues that were of concern specifically with the spend. And I want to say that what I'm seeing here is tremendous. What the story I'm taking away is that no one can argue that the City of Wichita Park Department is not efficient. We've got an extremely efficient, streamlined operation. I think that there's just other areas of concern that I would point to that, again, in the last year have brought a lot of issues, like issues of staffing, that because we are so efficient, because we are so cut to the bone, streamlined, we're losing service. And that's not acceptable. So I think you're doing a tremendous job with the resources that you have. So I think this helps paint a picture that says we need to, if we really want this kind of service, and I think, and I'm directing this specifically to the elected officials who set the budget here, you're answering the question in, if we want to maintain the kind of service that the City of Wichita deserves, then we need to be investing appropriately compared to benchmarks. And for years, unfortunately, because of circumstances inside and outside of our control, and again, folks, we're all doing the best that we can, but I think what these numbers tell us is that we need to make Troy look even better, and we need our service level to be raised. And this is what this is telling me, is that we've got a fantastic staff who's working their tail off with very little resources. So this is just building that picture that we need to start investing more. If we care about this stuff as a city, you need to go to your elected officials. That's why I'm so glad there's so many people here. This is worthy of our investment, and I'm very proud to be on this board because I'm seeing that said here in the numbers. So thank you very much.
Any other questions or comments for Troy? Just want to give a big kudos to Reggie and the rest of the staff. Seeing that number, the average number of participants in our programming at 119, and then the average of 50 for all other agencies, that is
It's outstanding.
truly remarkable. So well done to everybody. Big kudos. There's nothing else. We can move on to, seems like the big topic of the day, really of the past few years here, with the golf management RFP update. So I'll let these guys give a presentation real quick, and then I will open it up to public comment. I've got one person signed up for public comment, and then I will open it up, the opportunity for our Golf Advisory Committee members who are with us here present today and also joining us online, and then I will bring conversation back to the bench. Good?
So I have a PowerPoint that we're going to share with you guys, and Mr. Manning is going to help me with the very last part of it. It's more financial. So, yep. So a little questions is, how did we get to this situation, and why are we actually looking at a third-party operator to manage our golf courses? So there's been a lot of flow and ebb in regards to this topic the past, it goes back 10 years ago, but as of late, there's been even more discussion about what is going to work best for our golf system. So, from 1919 to 2019, we saw a huge drop in usage of our golf courses. We saw our numbers going down, our rounds going down, as well as our revenue, and which had an impact on our bottom line. So much so that we actually had to use some of the dollars from general fund to cover this, which was really a big concern. The golf system is supposed to be enterprise. It's supposed to actually pay for itself. And there's been some situations where it has not. Now, this year it definitely has. And one of the big reasons why is because we've seen a resurgence in golf, primarily to COVID. But prior to COVID, we saw the numbers really going down. And that was one of the reasons why we closed CLAP. We saw that the rounds at each one of the golf courses were going down. There was a lot of overhead. And so we wanted to consolidate our overhead costs. And by reducing and removing CLAP, it really kind of made a great positive impact on all the other golf courses. And I think it made a positive impact on the bottom line of our enterprise fund. So again, throughout the country, we've seen that both the public and private golf courses, we've seen rounds going down. And there's one of the biggest concerns is that, how is it going to be sustainable? Is it going to keep in that upward trajectory? Is it gonna flatten out? So a lot of the folks that we keep talking to are telling us that as COVID recovers, we're going to see a lot of folks going back to their old type of hobbies or the other things that they want to go do, whether it's going to a basketball game indoors, whether it's going to another large event, going back to some other sports that actually are indoors. So there's a lot of questions that are going on, but a lot of the folks that are telling us is that we are expecting the rounds to level off or actually decline in the near future. So, how we got to the situation today. So about, I don't know, it was 7 or 8 months ago, we had come to the park board and the golf advisory committee with an opportunity to work with Kemper and with First Tee. And from my perspective of what I saw through some of the golf advisory committee meetings and some of the other folks, they really wanted to see what opportunities are out there other than operating in-house. There was some questions and concerns about our management and the things that we're doing. What are some other options that we can look at? And this happened again 10 years ago. This is an ongoing question that keeps coming up. So from that meeting, we identified a request to go, let's do a request for proposal and see what other companies are out there that provide this service and how can we actually compare the two. So why are we just looking at one? Why don't we look at several? So we did the request for proposal, and we ended up getting 7 agencies, I'm sorry, not agencies, 7 different companies provide their proposal. From that 7, we narrowed it down to 4, and we did 4 interviews with those companies. There was actually a committee that was put together that consisted of several members from the community, actually 2 members from the golf community, and 1 member from the golf advisory committee, and 1 member from the park board, which is pretty standard. Those are things that we do quite often when we're looking at RFPs and we're bringing in services. And so we definitely want to get the stakeholders involved, and so they were part of this committee that went through the interview process with each one of those companies, the 4 of them that came in. So 4 companies came in and gave us their best presentations. And from that, the committee selected Kemper as having the best presentation, the best proposal, and the best opportunity for us to move forward if we went with a third-party management company. Some of the reasons why, a big reason why, is this gentleman by the name of Chris Toohey and his staff. It was very apparent that Chris was very invested in this community. He knows a lot about our system and had actually spent some time talking to a lot of our staff. And one of the things that's really I want to answer right now is that when we were talking to Kemper, as well as all the other companies, they all wanted our staff to stay. They want them to continue to work. So that was a really big thing. Kemper is looking at paying $150,000 to provide improvements to Clubhouse and F&B. They have this idea and this thought that we can really improve our food and beverage opportunities at each one of our golf courses. I was just looking at the numbers, and I think we were somewhere in the neighborhood of about $450,000 in F&B for this year. And I think we can definitely do a whole lot better than that. There's a lot of potential to do even more. So they want to do that as well as all the merchandising. And so there could be some really improvements in regards to all of our merchandising that we provide at all of our golf courses as well as F&B. They wanted to do a $10,000 donation to youth golf annually for 3 years. So they wanted to make sure that they were growing the game from the grassroots up. There would be a 10% food and beverage and pro shop merchandise given back to the city. Currently, right now, merchandise is 5% that we have a contract with the golf pros, and this would be 10% coming back to the city. They have a agronomist team to support our maintenance staff. There's already existing connections to the community. They know our golf system really well as it is. They do have multiple municipal contracts across the United States, and one of the questions that always came up is, how is that going to interact with Sand Creek, which they manage, and it's not too far away. So Chris Toohey would manage ours, and they would find a new person to manage Sand Creek. Obviously, there is some kind of connection there, but I think there's definitely going to be a huge separation in regards to operations. Our staff is not going to be working over there. Our equipment's not going to be going to Sand Creek and vice versa. So even though there's some opportunities for them to communicate and support each other in regards to the golf community and golf activities, very much independent of the two areas. They definitely want to work with the First Tee and Greater Wichita Junior Golf Foundation. They know that that's a huge important part of what we do currently, and we support them and work with them on everything from lessons. First Tee is actually going to be building their new facility over at McDonald. We worked with them on that, and with the new driving range over at McDonald. That's going to continue, and I think that's the expectation that we want with them. They had talked a lot about they wanted to create an advisory board working with either the existing golf advisory committee or some kind of variation of, and making sure that they have a connection with the golf community. So that's something that they really, really thought was important, and they made that very clear in the presentation. They have the ability to make some improvements to our golf courses, and there's definitely some areas that we can make some improvements on, and they definitely see some of our weaknesses, and I think they have some of the capabilities to make it a little bit better. And depending on the rounds and revenue, it's all dependent on weather. There's a lot of other things that go with it. They put together a strong pro forma, which at the end of the year would look like we could get somewhere in between $500,000 to $600,000 back to put back into the courses. This year, as we're finishing up the year strong, we're looking at finishing out with about 172,000 rounds, which is a pretty good amount of improvement from last year and the year before. And with that came some really good revenue. I've been able to put in close to $1 million, actually it's over $1 million, worth of investments back into the golf courses, which includes new golf mowers, improvements over at Tex for the building and HVAC, improvements at all the pump houses at all the courses, and improvements over at McDonald in regards to the bridges and the ponds over there, which is really crucial because we use that water for irrigation, which saves us dollars in the long run. So one of the reasons why we did so well is because we were very short-staffed. We were very thin, and we were able to make some savings. But if we end up operating this on our own, that's going to change. We can't sustain that low staffing rate any longer. And one of the reasons why we did that was because we don't know what's happening yet. It was really kind of difficult to recruit and hire people and then tell them, hey, you might not have the same type of job that you're looking at right now. So one of the reasons why we held off on that is that particular reason. And we also made some extra money to put back into the golf courses as well. But again, that's not sustainable. So this $500,000 to $600,000 is probably what we would be doing if we were fully staffed as well. So those were some of the strong points that we got from Kemper, and we were really impressed by their ability to do that. Here is a little bit more into the numbers, and I'm going to let Mr. Manning go over this with you guys, and then we'll be ready for any questions. And I'm going to take the long way around.
Good afternoon, President Fahnestock, members of the Park Board, Mark Manning with the Department of Finance. Good to see you again. Troy asked me to briefly talk about the pro forma. I didn't realize that he was going to make all my talking points over the last couple minutes, so he's kind of mentioned everything I was going to mention. This slide shows what we would expect out of Kemper based on discussions with them. And I'm going to start over on the right-hand column. I'm going to review this backwards. The bottom line is that based on what Kemper has provided us and based on their study of our system, they believe that they could contribute back to the city somewhere around $690,000 in 2022. That's the number in the lower right-hand corner. That would be composed of a couple of components. Troy mentioned the portion that we get back on the pro shop. The Kemper proposal would provide more than what we get, 10% versus 5%, and they would also provide us 5% of concession sales. So that would total 10% of concession sales. So that would be approximately $100,000 a year. And in addition to that, they believe that they can operate our courses with a margin of somewhere in the neighborhood of $590,000. They do have a couple of differences in what a city pro forma would look like. If we showed one there, a couple advantages, operational advantages. One is a lot of the administrative overhead costs that our golf system pays would not be applicable if we had private ownership. So we would benefit from that. The city would benefit from that. And there's a few areas where I think they would have some efficiencies that the city does not have, one of which is in their POS system, since they have a national-wide POS system. But the numbers on here are generally comparable to what we have seen in the past. That is to say, they appear reasonable based on the experience we've had. So again, we believe that they would contribute to the city somewhere in the neighborhood of $690,000 based on the pro forma they provided here. And as Troy mentioned, it's difficult to compare that to our experience in the past because we've had some pretty dramatic events. But he is correct that the system was losing somewhere in the neighborhood of $200,000 a year through 2019. He's also correct that in 2020, the system generated about $500,000 in net. But 2020 was a very unique year. We actually had courses shut down for a few months, which reduced the expenditure side. And then we had one of the best third quarters that the golf system has ever had on the revenue side. And finally, I'll point out he's also correct that this year we would expect the golf system maybe to produce as much as $1 million in net at the end of the year. Again, I think that's due to some relatively unique circumstances. We're still seeing a lot of play from the pandemic, although we've been warned that surge may not continue. But more importantly, like he mentioned, our cost structure is abnormally low right now because we have a lot of position vacancies right now. That's not necessarily a sustainable model for the system. In other words, I don't think it's something that the city could continue to do. And finally, I would point out that everything I'm showing you here on this page does not include the capital contribution that they have offered to make of $150,000, nor does it include amounts that they have agreed over the next couple of years to contribute for the benefit of junior golf. So that's all I have. If you have any direct questions, or I'll be around if there's any questions later.
Thank you. Questions for Mark right now? I'd like to give the opportunity for anybody from Kemper Sports that's joining us virtually. I don't see anybody in attendance here. If they want to piggyback off anything and share their thoughts. Ben, I think you're on mute.
Sorry about that. I turned that off. But we want to thank you for the opportunity to sit in and listen. A few more things come to mind when I see the presentations. It's sort of easy to talk about this year or next year, but the decision to bring on a management company like ours, we view as a proactive approach in looking into the future. What we're really trying to do, I think all parties, is to come up with a long-term solution that provides the opportunity to make sure that the golf courses and the maintenance equipment and the carts and the staff get better and better into the future, so there's an ongoing improvement for the next generation of golfers. And that, of course, can only be driven by our ability to generate new golfers, and that's why we're proactively promoting the junior golf program and the lesson programs, because we believe we're in the repeat customer business, and it's up to us as operators to generate the golfers of the future, and with a sustainable program that we bring to the table, we believe that's achievable. Also, just a little bit about Kemper Sports, we've been in the business for 40 years, manage over 100 golf courses, manage 35 municipal clients with 45 courses. So we are very well versed on the municipal side, but basically, this is our core business. And what we've seen is this business has gotten more and more specialized in every way. And so the way the company works is we've hired senior experts in agronomy, food and beverage, IT, sales and marketing, finance and accounting, all the disciplines of golf that now Wichita would have access to. So the way that we work is a general manager at a given property, if he or she has a problem in agronomy or in food and beverage or whatever, they can make one call and have access to those experts come and visit them. And that brings a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of experience and a wealth of expertise that no single golf course can really come up with, either from a staffing standpoint or from an operating standpoint. The other thing you get with a company like ours is best practices. By the fact that we operate all these golf courses throughout the United States, we see trends, we see what works, we see what doesn't work. And so we bring those learnings to Wichita in real time, and there's a real benefit to flattening the learning curve so that these programs can be implemented immediately. So those are the type of things a company like ours brings to the table. But we have a core philosophy, and that is, while we're a big company, we really believe every client and every golf course is unique. And we don't treat any two the same. We believe the Wichita properties are for the really nicest collection of golf courses we see throughout the United States, and we would be very excited to be involved in that, because we think that it has room for improvement and that we bring those kind of resources to the table. And we're Midwesterners, and you're Midwesterners. It's been actually a very positive experience with the relationship. Everybody is friendly and helpful, and we all like to do business with people we like and trust. So we really have enjoyed this relationship and the transparency. The thing I'd like to close with is that we have special proprietary programs for ourselves, and one of our programs is called True Review. And True Review allows, every time you play golf as a golfer at the Wichita courses, you'll get an email with a 5-question survey. And that's, how was your experience? How was the condition of the golf course? How was the food and beverage? How was your overall experience? And the ultimate question, would you recommend us to a friend? And so we have real-time surveying from our customers that we will receive on a daily basis. In fact, it all gets rolled up on a weekly basis and is sent to all the senior officers of the company. So every Sunday night, we all get sort of the survey results. And then we ask our general managers to reply to every survey that's negative if there's a question or concern. And all of this is part of sort of total transparency. So I think that what's going to happen here is the golfers were actually going to have more input and more ways to have feedback than just the posting on social media and on Facebook. So, going to close, but we're really excited. We very much would like to be involved, and any questions or however we can help, please let us know.
Thank you, Mr. Blake. If you would hang on for us here, we'll open it up to public comment right now. But if you want to hang on the line, I'm sure there will be more questions at the end of that from us. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got Dale Goder here for the public comment. Dale, are you the only one speaking today? Who knows? Is 5 minutes okay?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Golfers are notoriously apathetic. Unless you get them on the golf course, they're going to say a lot. So I hope you pay attention to the emails if they're not here in person. Before my time starts, I want to just clarify process. The agenda says that this will be an update of the RFP. Does that mean the park board will take no action on this today?
I'm not sure about that. It depends on where this conversation goes.
Well, I was challenged when I was on the park board that brief time when I suggested an action be taken that wasn't on the agenda. The attorney said that would be illegal. They couldn't do that. I just would like, for the sake of process, where are we with this thing? The problem is we're just a little bit overwhelmed by a sudden deluge of information we haven't had time to look at. Are you going to take action to recommend this going forward? And is it on the city council agenda for the 21st?
I don't have the answer to
Well, we
the
need
city
that answer,
council
Mr.
question.
Chairman. It's kind of hard to talk about something when we don't know where it's going. What is the status right now? Do you plan to bring it up for a vote?
So right now, we are in the process of collecting information, responses in the public forum.
Okay.
I believe that closes on December 20th. So at this point, I would feel a little hesitant on moving anything forward until that first spot is complete.
Just wanted to clarify that. All right, and I hope to make this as brief as possible. I sent an email to the park board with a suggested solution. We'd like to help here. There's a way out of this. We think that is the right way. When I say we, it's been folks on our Gulf Advisory, our ad hoc committee that's talked about this for 3 years, 4 years, going back to the McDonald Park thing. We think the simple solution is to hire an internal manager, keep that as a staff position, instead of outsourcing it to a management company, create a leadership board that is reflective of golfers. It would parallel what goes on in Lincoln, Nebraska. Mr. Hauptman talked about benchmarks. I've come to the park board with that study of Lincoln, Nebraska as a benchmark, something you could look at, a successful system that runs 4 public courses with internal management. In the last 10 years, their revenue went up $1 million, ours went down $1 million. So there's a benchmark there. If you want to look at benchmarks, look at comparable communities. Aurora, Colorado is another one. Similar size MSA, 5 courses, done really well financially that same period of time. Mr. Hauptman said the decline extended from 1999 to 2019. In 2010, the Gulf Division had $1 million carryover. In 2012, it had a $500,000 carryover. So we're not talking about a 20-year period. We're talking about a period of time of about 10 years here that kind of reflective of the current administration. He's also talked about stakeholders. In the presentation on Facebook or on YouTube, wherever it was, sat with you, Mr. Chairman, and you asked him where this all started. He said it started with a push from stakeholders to pursue private management. I don't know who those stakeholders are. I'm a stakeholder. I play golf. There are women's golf, men's golf, senior golf, junior golf. I don't know who those, I'd like a little clarity. Who were the stakeholders that are saying this is a good idea? I think that there's only one that really counts. He's sitting in the back there. His name's Robert Layton. He'd like to privatize it, and that's where it kind of starts and ends. So that the third point in my suggestion was creating a more accountable fiscal model, and that's to stop draining so many dollars out of the general fund, out of the Gulf Division into the general fund. It's been about $500,000 a year, either in upcharges for things like IT or for the central administration charge, which has been $300,000 to $350,000 a year. That's gone down in this budget cycle. It's been reduced. I'm not sure why, but we think overall that's a workable model that will be sustainable. It'll keep the money internally, and I think golfers will be better served with that. Just a few more observations. Mr. Ben mentioned transparency is a good thing here. We believe that. This hasn't been very transparent. 60 golfers emailed the park board last January protesting, or not protesting, just suggesting that private management's not the best idea. Mr. Chairman, you ignored those 60 emails. In fact, members of the park board made fun of them, disparaged them, said they were repetitive, and they wouldn't pay attention to them. How that's different from the comments that are filed as part of these forums eludes me. The overwhelming response from public golfers is that this is not a good idea. Now, you can say public golfers don't know anything, that they're not informed, they're not relevant, but the fact is your core constituency says almost unanimously, this is a bad idea, do something else. And I hope that that idea of benchmarks is a really great idea. Look at those, take a look at Lincoln, take a look at Aurora before you jump into this. I also just recently impressed with the performance of Botanica. Botanica is our crown jewel of our park department. And why is that? It's run as a 501(c), independent of the park board. The city pays some salaries there. It's a really good model. It's revenue-driven, and it is just a wonderful institution. So maybe if you step back a little bit and take a look at some other options, that might be one to consider as well. I guess, and those numbers are just kind of stunning. I have to ask about the reference to 10%, if you could put that slide back up, 10% of food and beverage and pro shop sales goes to the city. That's not true. Right now, the city gets all of the food and beverage. 5% of the clubhouse sales goes to the city. So that's the kind of misinformation that's just troubling when we see this. We really don't know how much facts you really are dealing with here. So that leads to my final, I guess, the thing I would like to know in the end is how much money could Kemper expect to make in a year? And let me say, Chris Toohey is a genius. He runs Sand Creek. We've played there. It's a great company. They do great work. But I want to know, out of that $4 million in revenue, if they're getting 90% of the food and beverage, how much do they expect to make? And the reason I want to know that is because then you do that side by side. If we do it ourselves with competent management, key word, competent management that you hire at a competitive rate, sign them to a 3-year contract, take this RFP stuff off the table, I just wonder what that number is. And I hope nobody will think to approve this without knowing what would that top profit figure be. There's no resentment about Kemper taking that money. That's their business. But we should know that. I want to be told that how much of those dollars will end up in going to Kemper as opposed to going into the system. If it's run internally by an internal manager, all of that food and beverage income stays in the Gulf Fund, goes to the support of golf courses. So there's a lot here to unpack. I know the Golf Advisory Committee has some thoughts on that as well. I would note the Golf Advisory Committee voted to oppose private management. You voted on the minority side of that one, Mr. Chairman. Membership of the GAC changed, and so that vote changed in this last month. But there's a strong sentiment that we could do better doing it ourselves. It's like that old saying back in grade school when they taught you about crossing a railroad track: stop, look, and listen. Let's stop this process. Let's take a look at some of this information in a more critical fashion, and let's start listening to public golfers. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Dale. I'll just respond to a few of your points here. How did we get here and who are the stakeholders? So if you remember, Dale, you were on that board at the time, I believe. There was a letter of intent that came from Kemper, and we took a look at it you can go sit down. You're good. We took a look at it and decided as a joint Golf Advisory Committee and Park Board, we wanted to open it up to the RFP process to maintain transparency. So that's my first point. The second point, your point about the 60 emails being disparaged by us or mocked or whatever is completely false. I read every single one of those emails. They have been put into the meeting minutes as far as I know. So that's completely untrue that we mocked them and disparaged them. I read every single one, and I believe everybody on here, outside of Chris, he wasn't on the park board at the time, but he as well would have read every single one. I'm certain of it. And then also the 10% of merchandise and F&B, I believe that's Kemper's proposal, if I'm not mistaken, correct? Okay, so might have been a miscommunication there. But Ben, if you want to respond to anything, I see you popped up here.
Yeah, well, the proposal is we will be taking the operating risk of the entire food and beverage department and the pro shop and paying the city 10% of gross sales. So the city has no risk, and we're taking the risk on both of those operations specific to F&B. We pay all the labor, we pay all the inventory, so we take the inventory risk, we pay the food and beverage operating expenses. So, it's department risk, and it's something that we've found throughout the U.S. that because it's specialty F&B and specialty merchandise, Most cities don't want to be in that business. And so we've offered an alternative to that.
Thank you, Ben. I'd like to open it up to the Golf Advisory Committee, both joining us here and online. Richard, Nancy, if you guys would like to speak on anything. I know Nancy and I had a conversation earlier today about some of her concerns and what we're hearing on the forum and the emails that we're getting. But Richard, I'll let you pop up here.
Thank you very much, President Feinstock and board members. My name is Richard Schodorf. I've been on the Golf Advisory Board for too long. And what I'd just like to, and I'll try to make my remarks brief, would like to bring to your attention just a little bit of the history of how we got here from the perspective of the GAC, because I think I'm the only one left on the GAC that was there originally. It started with a presentation from Mark Manning, who is a rock star of finance, and it was when we were losing money, and he made a presentation to the park board about how we could dig our way out of it. And one of the things, or the thing that he addressed, was that there were things that we could control, which are the number of people who are playing our courses and what we are making in things like food service and card fees, and what we are making once they get to the course. So with that as a backdrop, we went back and the suggestion was to take our system, because it wasn't working, and try to go to something else. And what we did was borrowed from the local charity that runs a health organization also, and they had a prescription model. And I actually served on one of their boards, and they're ridiculously successful with it, so we thought we'd borrow it and try to use it for golf. And what we did was Mr. Manning came up with an amount, because we had a fee system for passes that we were offering that Mr. Manning showed that we were losing a lot of money on. And the question was, how do we move those into an area where we would use the subscription method? He came up with the amount, which is the amount that golfers are pretty much being charged today. And the thought was, use that as a base to transition, and then bump it to a little higher figure that would have been sustainable. So we did that. And then the question about raising card fees and also doing a better job with food and beverage was going to be left for later. Our transition worked very well, and we kept most of the people. We then suggested that we raise the fee from roughly $55 to $75, because that was a fee that an analyst told us that we would probably not have much leakage or loss in. We made that suggestion 2 years ago, and it never was acted upon. So those are funds that I think could have easily been used to offset any payroll issues. But the problem that you end up with, we kept building it. And yes, COVID definitely had a role in more people playing golf, but we are knee-deep into this subscription method. The city, just to make sure, went out and got a grant to hire and brought in 4 golf professionals who were professionals at different courses around the United States. They issued a report and they said, don't do it. That don't do this subscription fee. It doesn't translate from a health organization to golf. the system we were working wasn't working, so we did it anyway, and it seems to have worked. The problem that you have is, you have that is the system that you have. That is a totally different system than is operated by Kemper in their, I haven't looked at every one of the facilities, but I did a quick look at a number of them, including Sand Creek, and they do have passes, but they're much higher, and they aren't aimed at volume. What the subscription system is, you get people to sign in, some of them will play a lot, and to some of them it's a huge advantage. If you get the rest of the puzzle together, as Mr. Manning suggested, which is increase some of the other fees and bring in changes to food and beverage, which every time we tried to do it, we were told, no, we can't do that until this gets straightened out. So we've left a lot of money on the table. But what I worry about is what is going to happen if you bring the management system company in. Are they going to try to reverse it? Because I worry that you're going to end up with a free fall. And you're going to have a lot of people that are currently members, and they're members for the reason that people belong to Amazon Prime. I mean, they're looking for a good deal that will allow them within their financial constraints to do something of value to them. And we don't seem to be having, if you look right now across the country, a lot of the COVID is already starting to wear off. Our rounds are not going down. They're going down in a very small amount, because our core now is the subscription base. And if we start by going in and substantially raising their fees, cutting their benefits, telling them they can't play golf on the weekends, or you can only play in the hottest, you're going to see, I'm afraid, you're going to have a transition where things are going to fall apart. Or I shouldn't say possibility. I can't see into the future, and I don't know what's going to happen, but I know that generally it's a different model. And right now, our seniors are eating it up, and I think they will stay with us with a price increase of what we suggested. But if the goal is to sit down and say, we can sell Saturday morning and Sunday morning to the average golfer and make more money, yes, you can on the short term for that Saturday and that Sunday. But what happens in January and February when you're too cold to play? I just want to make sure that when you make that decision, you're making it with a viewpoint of, because there was nothing in the contract, and I made a request to ask if it would be put in the contract. I didn't receive a response, but I would like to know what Kemper thinks about this model versus their model, because they truly are different. And with that, I really appreciate very much taking the time to listen to me. And I'm afraid over my 6 or 8 years, you had to listen to me too much, and I apologize for that.
Thank you, Richard. Certainly, sustainability and affordability is one of our top priorities in the golf system here in Wichita. So I'll give the opportunity to Mr. Blake to kind of talk about some of your pricing mechanisms and what you foresee in the future potentially.
Well, look, if it's not broken, don't try to fix it. Look, the membership model has been a great model. It's proven to create the rounds, and we have no intention of changing that. As a matter of fact, we don't create policy. The policy is created and approved by the city council. That's including pricing. We're being hired on a fee for services where we provide all the services, and as been talked about earlier, a number of those services are sort of allocations or charges from the city that are going to go away. So sort of on apples to apples, we're replacing some of those services. But the fact of the matter is that we don't control policy. We don't control pricing. We have there's no benefit to Kemper Sports to cut expenses. All of those sort of talking points are really a misunderstanding of how the core agreement works, and that is we're hired to provide services. We provide our expertise, we provide input, but ultimately it'll be the golf committee, the park board, and the city council that will decide all of these items. And had a very good year. I think the one thing that just from our standpoint that we see across the country, we actually believe that golf is not going to drop off the cliff. We think what's happened, we know by our data that what's taken place is you had, 10 years ago, what we called occasional golfers playing 8 to 10 rounds, quit playing. And what we found is those golfers are back. It's 10 years later, their kids are now maybe in college or out of college. And they say, hey, I really like this game. I'm glad I'm back and I'm going to play more. So it's our job to actually get the existing players to play more, and it's our job to create new players. And so there's no reason why we would have any policy that would discourage that. We have plenty of capacity. We've got 4 golf courses. So there's absolutely nothing to the discussion, nor has it ever been discussed that we would in any way change or get rid of the membership program. Certainly these programs evolve. Certainly you can't play Saturday morning for $4 because the fact it is an enterprise fund, the golf courses have to be self-sustaining. You can't go to the city and ask for the general fund to subsidize it. So it still has to be economically viable, still has to pay its bills, it still has to produce enough funds to buy golf carts and do some of the things you have to do, maintenance equipment, and maintain the golf courses and have a high level of customer service. And that's what a company like ours brings to the table. And as I said in my earlier presentation, we view what happens in Wichita completely differently than we do what happens in Los Angeles or what happens in Nashville. These are individual golf courses, individual clients, individual communities, and we do our best to make sure that we work within what the city council and the golf committee wants us to do. And that's where we take our orders, and that's what we execute from.
Thank you, Ben. I think probably 3/4 of the emails and the comments on the public forum are related to concerns about the pricing, so thank you for providing some clarity on that. Mr. Ferris?
Mr. President, my name is Greg Ferris. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I know a little about public golf. I've watched it pretty close since 1987. I've tried to make sure that Wichita Public Golf was as fine as it could be. It's had its ups and downs. I was privileged enough to sit on the selection committee. I want to say a few things. First and foremost, I want to tell you that we did some of this you may have already heard. I apologize. I couldn't get here as fast as I'd like to. We heard 5 really good companies, but Kemper was heads above everybody we heard. I think everybody on the committee believed that Kemper was the right one to be selected from the RFPs. Now, saying that, I want you to think about a couple things. I don't totally disagree with Dale at all. This system can run and operate without using Kemper. I've believed that for a very long time. There are some things would have to change, some things that have to be done different, but it can be done, and it can be done right. All you have to do is look at the numbers. You're going to set a record for rounds this year. You did it with an understaffed bunch of golf courses who worked their tails off. So there are 3 things as a park board I think you need to absolutely think hard and long about in your recommendation. Number 1, as I said on that committee when Kemper, in all due respect, he'll remember this, said they wanted to take 90% of food and beverage, I said no way. If you allow in the contract Kemper to take 90% of food and beverage, that is a huge mistake. I know they're taking the risk. There is no risk. equipment's already there. The ability to serve food and beverage is already there. This year alone, Auburn Hills is going to do over $150,000 in food and beverage. Do not agree. I said we would reverse that, and I would support that, and that's the way it should be. I have no problem if Kemper grows that and gets a piece of that. They should. They should not, under any circumstances, get 90%, and use a park board as the watchman of the contract when it comes forward. That's imperative that not be a part of that contract. That would be a travesty and would be a slap in the face to the golfing community. The second thing I think is very important, I think, is the consideration of employees. I don't know how all that can transpire, but I will tell you that there are several of them that are very close to being vested in the retirement plan of the city of Wichita. The city has merged with other entities and has kept them as employees to allow them to participate in that retirement plan. That's a must. These people have worked their tails off for the last 2 or 3 years, shorthanded, and it is imperative to me, and I think to them and to the golfing community, that you treat them right. So I think that there should be a way, and there is a way, that they can remain, if they want, and they may not want to, but they may want to be able to get to that retirement plan that they paid into for 7, 10, or 12, or 15 years. It'd be wrong, I think, to go a different way. And I think the third and most important thing is the oversight. I think Kemper is very willing to have the oversight. You heard him say it. I don't doubt anything he said. I think, as I said, their presentation was heads above. So I think you need to look, okay, do we balance it? From a cost standpoint, if we pay them $200,000 a year and we give them 10% of the food and beverage, it's a wash financially to the golf system, in my opinion. What do we gain from that? You get out from underneath the city umbrella, which, no offense to the city, it's just the way they do things. It's hard to hire people through the city system. So you may have that advantage if you are under Kemper. That's a true plus, is being underneath Kemper and their ability to hire and to bring people in. And if you're short-staffed, you can move people around a lot easier under a Kemper model than you can under the city model. Is that have to be that way? No. So, but from a finance and from an employee standpoint and being able to have enough, the Kemper model works well, as long as there's the oversight that needs to be there, and I think we all agree with that. So I think that those are the things that, from my standpoint, sitting on the committee, listening to all the presentations, hearing that those things as a park board, I think that you have to watch. I have a lot of confidence in Mr. Hauptman and Mr. Layton, the ability to hear what everybody's saying and make sure that gets into the contract. But I will tell you that if there is a 90% provision in the contract, when it goes before the city council, I will stand up and say, I cannot support this, and there will be a lot of people at that council meeting that says they won't. I think if you're not giving them the 90, but giving them the 10, allowing them to grow their revenues based on them growing food and beverage, which benefits everybody, if you do that, then I think that works. So that's my thoughts, having watched golf for a very long time, having played golf on virtually almost exclusively on the Wichita golf courses, traveling and seeing how others operate. And we have a wonderful system. I think it can be better. It can be better under the model that Dale said. It can be under the model of Kemper. I think we just have to make sure that you look at it and do it properly. I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Ferris. Any questions?
Thank you.
I think it's obviously imperative that, we take care of our existing employees. I think that's always been a priority, not just on the GAC, the park board, but also the selection committee that was brought up a few times that Thursday a couple months ago in those meetings. With the food and beverage percentages, we're not here to act as a broker by any means, but I see City Manager Layton taking notes back there, so I'll step away from that. And then, Troy, I guess this would be for you. What does the process of an oversight committee look like, and timing on that?
So let me get a couple of questions out of the way first. So we have talked about making sure those employees that are close to being vested, that's being 7 years, There's actually 2 employees that are very close to being vested, and we'd want to find a way to make sure that they continued to put into the system so they can be vested. That is a priority, and we want to make sure to take care of our employees. I think we've been able to do that in other locations throughout the city when we've had to make adjustments in regards to employment. That's so important. We worked really hard with the staff to get through so many things, and I want to make sure that they're taken care of. So that is going to be an important thing for us. In regards to the percentage for concessions, we're still in negotiations. We can ask Kemper to make a different offer on that, and it could depend on other things as well. So there's actually going through some negotiations right now. We're going back and forth of some different terms and ideas, but we definitely want to make sure that we are not leaving any dollars on the table that could go back to the golf course. We want to make sure it's fair. We want to make sure it's fair for us. We want to make sure it's fair for Kemper, and we want to make sure that ultimately it's having a great outcome and benefit for the golfers. That's the bottom line. And then, what was the third question you asked?
Oversight committee, the
Oversight
process and timing there.
So we've talked about what would this look like, and Kemper definitely wants to be more involved with the Golf Advisory Committee. I don't know if it's going to be the Golf Advisory Committee that's going to take that lead and working with them, but there definitely needs to be some representation from the golf community working with Kemper on whatever items that they want to look at. Ultimately, a contract with the city has oversight by council, and they're going to make sure that we do that through our finance department and through the Parks and Recreation Department, that all those items are met, whether it's financial, whether it's operational wise. In the contract, there's some things that we want to look at, and this is still being negotiated, but we want to make sure that there's some touch points in there that, hey, this is what we're expecting, this is how we're going to inspect it, this is, whether it's going to be financial, whether it's going to be operational, maintenance-wise, and if they're not meeting those, there's going to be some ways that we want to make sure that those are being met. And so those are things that we're going to be providing back to Kemper that we want to offer in our negotiations. So hopefully that answers some of your questions.
Yeah, thank you. I just have a quick question for Mr. Blake as well, getting back to the percentages here. Mr. Blake, what are your standard practices in terms of merchandise sales? How do you incentivize your golf professionals to move as much merchandise or product as they can?
Well, we don't generally do something specific like that because we'd rather them have, incentives more globally. Actually, that's sort of the problem. If you sort of pay only through pro shop sales, they have an incentive to focus on that. We want to focus on customer service. We want to focus on survey results. We want to focus on, driving rounds and customer satisfaction. So we would put a bonus program together that would have 3 or 4 components, of which pro shop sales would be one of them, but it wouldn't focus solely on that.
Gotcha. Thank you. That is very apparent when I go up to Sand Creek up in Newton. I can definitely see that. So well done there. Is that the true review that you spoke about?
Yeah, we have the True Review, of course, is the survey program. We have a program called True Service, which is really the pillar of the company. I haven't mentioned it, and I should have. But basically, every employee in Kemper Sports, that's over 7,000 employees, every year goes through the program. In today's world with video and Zoom and online, a lot of this can be done online, and it's basically a customer service program from an attitude standpoint. And it's how we expect our employees to treat our customers, how we expect them to treat each other, and what you do in situations that there are either conflict or issues or the type of things that you run into in dealing with the public. And it's really turned out to be a great program because the employees now know what's expected of them. They feel confident and able to come forward and address problems. As I said, the True Review survey program, there's sort of know where to hide. All if there are issues, they come out quickly, and we address them. And so, Chris has done a great job up there, and it does show that these programs work and that they're really customer focused, because ultimately we're in the repeat customer business and we're trying to get them back again. And the only way we can do that is if we deliver on the product and the service and the attitude.
Thank you. Nancy, would you like to say anything? No? I know you and I had a conversation earlier today about what does that look like for the golf professionals, and I hope that cleared some of that up for you.
One of the questions I had for you was that I read all these comments and things on the forum and listened to the recordings, and there were a lot of comments that the public has as just fear. I mean, just not knowing what's ahead and what would happen if we did this or that. And I found myself a little bit frustrated by responses not being made to those comments. I know Shanna did a nice job with some of those, but some of the questions and concerns that the constituents had were not addressed. And a lot of the things were really some misinformation, but that comes out of the fear. And so I just hope that you or the people who sat in on the interviews or Mr. Hauptman could actually go through and respond to every one of those things, or at least categorize the concerns and address those.
Yes, thank you, Nancy. Certainly, the past few weeks, we've been sitting down on Thursday morning. Mr. Hauptman did it last week, correct? And planning on this week as well to address some of those larger concerns. But if we can make a concerted effort to respond to each individual concern on the forum, I think that would go a long way in addressing some of the fear, the questions that they may have. And I don't know if that's my territory, or I'll leave that to city staff. But if that's, I agree with you, Nancy, that needs to be addressed there in the forum, because not a lot of people will hop over to Facebook on a Thursday morning for a live and hope to hear in a 20-minute ordeal their concern being addressed. So if we could make a concerted effort there, I think that would go a long way. Thank you. I see Niall's hand up as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to weigh in briefly on this. One of the things that I learned, and I think is real important, is that according to Troy, the negotiations are still going on, and that there hasn't been a contract that's been agreed upon both by Kemper and by the city. And so I would caution the park board from making a recommendation to approve Kemper or anyone else, actually, or about this contract, because you're going to give the vendor a big leg up if they know already that the park board has approved this and ready to send it to the city council. The other thing I wanted to briefly touch on is, as Nancy mentioned, there's a lot of fear in those comments, and a lot of it has to do with pricing. I know that at Sand Creek, your green fees are inclusive of a cart. And we have a lot of people who do not use carts, and any pricing that is introduced that says, well, you're going to pay $25 for a green fee, and that includes a cart, and that is your standard pricing. A lot of people that are going to feel like, well, gosh, we're walking Now we're just subsidizing the riders because we're paying the same green fee. It's just something to think about in that way. And the last thing I want to mention is that those online explanations that Troy was doing, those last one I think was 9 o'clock on a Tuesday morning, and I know that that was a beautiful day to be out playing golf, and I have a feeling that most people that are concerned about this were out on the golf course rather than at home tuning in on that presentation. So I'd like you to think about the timing of that and giving golfers plenty of notice, either through that forum website or through your push notifications that you do with text messages. And that's really about all I've got to say, other than I would hope that Kemper would continue the practices that we have in place in terms of how many players you can put out in a single group. So we allow fivesomes. I know some courses don't do that. I would hope that Kemper would respect that and continue that. And then just good news to hear that any pricing decisions would have to be approved through the park board and then by the city council. I think that goes a long way to alleviate some other fears and concerns that have been raised. I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Niall. One thing I would add to that, I don't know if anybody's played Sand Creek recently, but it's pretty darn hard to walk that golf course. I think the majority of their play is strongly recommended, if not required, to take a golf cart just based on geography out there. I think the only tournaments that I've seen where players actually walked were professional tournaments or qualifiers. Even in college, we took golf carts for speed of play. So I'm sure they've thought of that, and certainly kind of reiterating what Mr. Blake said earlier. Each golf course is different. We're not trying to make Auburn Hills the next Sand Creek or Mac Park the next Sand Creek or what have you. Each golf course has its own character and its own layout. So another thing I would say to anybody listening, those Facebook Lives, you don't have to be on that particular live. It will be recorded and on our Facebook page, but if we can make an effort to continue to push those via social media, whether it be Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I don't know if we have a TikTok, but continue to push that so that we can communicate with as many people as possible. Is there anybody else that would like to speak? If not, we can bring this conversation back to the bench here. And Chris, yeah.
Okay, I definitely appreciate all of the discussion. I really do, and I'm coming at it with a very open mind on this issue because I do have a secret. I actually do not play golf myself. Much like Troy, having a very serious injury with pickleball, I had a serious golf injury and I hurt my back younger, but unlike Troy, who's going to come back to the game, I gave golf a break. So that allows me a certain dispassionate view from the entire thing. I know this is a highly charged issue, but I can say, when I hear about this discussion, I like food, I like beverage. I've had food and beverage with Dale, as a matter of fact. We've talked about many issues like this, and I think that there's a whole lot that can be done. The questions that are in my mind, it's obvious to me that Kemper is a best-in-class provider of private management services. That's obvious. That's what I'm seeing. What I do have concern about is, you just said it yourself, Miss, about there's a lot of fear, and it sounds like what that comes from is from a lack of information. And that's really all it is. It's lack of information. I promise you that most of this stuff can get solved by some of these conversations. And I actually had talked to Dale before saying, what is the paint the sky blue situation? And I still think that there's an opportunity for that. The questions that I need to have answered before I can be supportive is I need to have it in black and white, and I think this would be on both on Troy and on Kemper to answer, what are the service declines going to be if we adopt this program? What are the service increases going to be laid out on paper? What's the user fee for the average user going to look like a year from today if we adopt this proposal? I need to know what the metrics of success are. And I need to know what the clawbacks are going to be if they fail to meet those metrics. I need to see what that looks like in contractual language. And I think everybody will feel better after that. I think that some other things that need to be considered are the length of the contract. I've not heard that discussed. If we can talk about what the length of this contract is, what the sunset is, I think I need to hear that. I haven't heard a word on that as well. So I would like to know, actually, Kemper had mentioned the surveys they were going to have. Is that going to be available for public review? Can I see the surveys? Or do I have to be on the park board to see the survey, or can an average person see it on the website? I think absolutely. There's no reason they shouldn't. This should be completely transparent. So all of that to say, I mean, like, yeah, even the questions about the pricing, I'm not in the F&B business. I need to know what the standard practices are. I think the answer to a lot of this stuff is, have we given a good faith effort to providing comparable services to what Kemper is suggesting in a public solution? Everybody's saying it's possible, and I know it sounds like, again, we have a very efficient staff. What hiring decisions need to be made to show on paper, this is what Kemper does, this is what our proposal with the alternative, because everybody wants better. At the end of the day, everybody wants better service. I want to make sure that the private or the public golfers feel like they're getting a better level of service no matter what a year from today. A better value for their service is what everybody's after. I am not wild about this occurring during a lame duck after an election. I am not wild about proposing this right now. That does not have a good look about it. And so I'll just leave that there. Finally, this is, as a matter of fact, on the agenda, according to the City of Wichita. It is item 4 under new business, recommendation of adoption of this new proposal. So it is on the agenda, and I would make a motion that we potentially pull this back and study this a little further for all of the reasons I listed. I am not in principle opposed to private management. I am opposed to how this is going down without the answers being given. So that's my position on this.
Thanks, Chris. And I'll give Mr. Blake, Troy, or City Manager Layton an opportunity to respond to some of those questions. I hope you guys wrote all that down, but thank you. No, I agree. I think we're still in the first phase of this process. I believe the forum closes on December 20th. As I mentioned earlier in the meeting, that I would be a little hesitant on this, and then learning that the negotiations are still ongoing. I would feel better once everything was in writing. We could share, with the public exactly what it is. Certainly Mr. Ferris and Mr. Schodorf and everybody that spoke today, shared some valuable insight, and hopefully we can go back to Kemper and sit down at the table and make sure that we, go about this the right way, get everything in writing, and then present it, to us, the park board, and then the city council, as well as the community.
So, Eddie, question for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Leo, I know you got a role here, so.
Oh, you're good. I just want to make sure that I'm clear, that we're clear as a park board, that today we're not looking for a recommendation on this, correct?
Correct, yeah. I'm not comfortable enough yet.
Okay, perfect.
Learning that the negotiations are still ongoing. Sure. As far as I know, that's what I took out of it. We need to go back to the table with Kemper, it sounds like, as the city needs to go back to the table with Kemper and nail down a few things before I would feel comfortable moving forward with it.
No, I do. I agree too, and I'd have to echo what some of the points that Chris made. I'd love to answer some of these questions. I mean, I through a lot of the feedback, I know there were several comments about how do we avoid another ice rink situation, right? And so, for me, it's just that is right. How do we make sure that our facilities remain in the exceptional condition that they are, but also that our public golfers have the ability to access golf. I don't call myself a golfer because I lose more golf balls than I actually hit, but,
Welcome to the club.
But really, that would be my concern, right? Is how do we ensure that these facilities maintain that quality, and that we actually make the improvements to them that we know should be made.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd just respond to that. I hear that as well. I see that in the forum. To me, that's kind of an apples to oranges comparison a little bit.
Yeah.
I know Kemper is, as you said, they're top notch. I think they run 40-some municipal golf courses throughout the United States, and I'm comfortable with them. But it's getting our community comfortable with them as well, because they will ultimately, if we move forward with this, they will be the kind of the figurehead. And certainly the golfers know who Chris Toohey is, and how fantastic of a job he's done up at Sand Creek in the last however many years. And so that's what I would say. It's a little bit apples to oranges. These guys are experts. Not saying that the ice rink people weren't experts,
Sure.
but they've been doing it for 40 plus years. And I've got confidence. It's just a matter of the community having confidence in them as well.
No, I appreciate that, and I agree.
Anything else? I would move to put this on hold for now. Go back to the negotiation table with Mr. Layton and Kemper Sports, and make sure everything is in writing before we decide on anything permanent. That would be my motion.
I second that.
Got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? See none. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passes. I think Philip said aye too.
I did, yes.
Mr. Chair,
Sir?
would you entertain a motion for a 5-minute recess,
Sure.
potentially? Could I get I will motion for a 5-minute recess. Could I get a second?
Second. Motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Thank you.
Thanks. go ahead and call this meeting back to order here. I would like to make a motion to just have the finance update today, and then we can adjourn if that's good with everybody. Motion and a second. Got a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. With that, finance update, Miss Emma.
Okay. It's going to be really straightforward like we did in the past. We're going to start talking about revenue, expense, and golf as well. So for the revenue side of it, we're going to, for next slide, oh, I can do myself, sorry. We're going to talk about where money are at as far as revenue goes. I do have end of November data, so we're sitting at about 1.6 million, and we're about 91% satisfying city's dark target, which is pretty close to 100%. I mean, December is going to be slow, so it might not be 100%, but that's pretty darn close to the goal set by the city. And then there's a little more details of where revenue comes from, is consistent with previous month as well. As far as revenue goes, for comparison purposes, we're not, it's the same story. We're not where we were in 19, but we're doing a lot better. It's 61% increase compared to 2020. So that's the same story as of, compared to last month as well. On expense side of it, we're sitting at almost 15 million year to date, and we're 80% spent from budget. And then we talked about pretty thoroughly last meeting where the remaining balance comes from. It's from personnel. And we actually have agenda items going to council next Tuesday to move $100,000 from personnel to commodity and the contractual to covered expense. So that will go up as well after we have that passed. Next slide. And as far as golf goes, the revenue is listed for all golf courses. We're sitting at about 4.8 million total in revenue. And we had about 3.8 in expense. And that gave us net total P&L as of end of November, about $1 million. And there's a little comparison to 19 and 20. 19 was a deficit, so that's consistent to what everyone has been talking about through the meeting, and 2020 was a lot better, but 2021 so far has been a really good year. So that's what I have right now, all today. Any questions?
Thank you, Emma.
Yep.
This question is for Troy, and I believe you mentioned it earlier, Troy. How much of that $1 million number is going back into the golf courses this year and scheduled for next year?
So let me start off with last year. Last year we had somewhere in the neighborhood about $450,000, and we've already spent $350,000 of that. So that money carries over to the next year. That was roughly about $100,000. This year, I think our revenues, our bottom line is going to be about $1.3 million. I've already started spending some of that money. And so I think we've spent money on, actually made some movements of $350,000, and that's for some of the irrigation pump house work that we wanted to do. So I think what we're going to have is close to $800,000, $700,000 moving forward for next year. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah. This is all golf.
Yes.
Just making sure.
Thank you. Any questions for Emma or Troy?
No questions, just a comment that, again, considering the staffing levels, you don't have to come back, just considering the staffing levels, considering all of the factors that were mentioned today, I just wanted to say congratulations to you, to the staff, for an excellent job. I don't care how these numbers came so far in the black. I don't care if it's a freak aberration, but I just want to say you need to be recognized for all the hard work. So thank you to everybody on the staff for all of this work this year.
All in all, I just want to say the golf staff just really kicked butt. They did a lot of extra work and made a huge difference for everybody golfing. And then the rest of the Parks and Recreation staff, Marty over at Botanica and his whole group, a year and a half ago, not knowing what's happening with COVID, were fearful that they were going to go bankrupt. the exact opposite happened. More and more people were going to Botanica, and so he's had to be flexible and readjust on how he's doing things. He is busy man. Our rec staff, the same thing. All of our programs, especially all of our outdoor programs, have gone really well. Great Plains Nature Center. We have Amanda, who's now the director. She's less than a year into the job. I think only about 7 or 8 months into the job, and she's changing things for the better. We have worked our butts off. Our department has really done a great job, and I think it's reflective of what we did with the gold medal. When we did our pitch for the gold medal, you see a lot of other departments, they really talk a lot about their newest facilities. They talk about their state-of-the-art recreation centers. We did have a great year for aquatics, opening up all our new facilities, which was another Herculean work that Brian Hill did and made a huge impact. But what we based our gold medal application on was our staff. Our staff is second to none, the best. So.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you, guys. One last thing before we adjourn here. Going back to Botanica, definitely want to thank Marty and Kyle and the rest of the staff over there. They do a fantastic job every year in December, November, December, and into January with the Botanica lights, the illuminations. I went last week, and I'm just so blown away. I've gone every year for the past probably 8 or 10 years, and it's just gotten better each year. The new parking lot over there is fantastic, and tons of people were there when I was there, and if you haven't yet, I implore you to check it out. We've got some decent weather, even if it's pretty chilly. Bundle up and go take a look and support those guys, because it really is a top 5 venue for Christmas lights in the nation. So got to put that out there and plug Botanica a little bit. So with that, does anybody have anything else? Anything that we need to put on the agenda for next month that isn't already? See none, I would move to adjourn.
I'll second.
Got a motion and a second. Discussion. All in favor? Aye.
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 All opposed? Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.